challenges and successes, hardship and joy, pain and blessings. The dichotomies of life, right? We eagerly embrace successes, joys, and blessings, yet we become frustrated when challenges, hardship, and pain intersect our lives. But what if the tough times of life are just cleverly disguised opportunities to grow? Resilience, strength, wisdom, courage, and grit are grown when we embrace and choose to learn from those challenging times of life. I invite you to tune your ear to the lessons and insights my guests gained when they fought to overcome the tough times that intersected their lives. Consider how their strategies, mindsets, and habits equipped and empowered them to grow, even thrive, despite the challenges they faced. Welcome to the Challenges Won't Stop Me podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Brown. I'm honored you've chosen to listen to this episode. I believe you will be encouraged and inspired to seek to grow through your challenges. Let's keep moving forward. Today, I am very excited to introduce you to my new friend, Kim Patton. We came across each other because we are both podcasters, and I am having her as a guest because she has overcome quite a few challenges, right, Kim?
Yeah, too many.
And then later, I will be honored that she is interviewing me about my books on her book therapy podcast. She is also married to Kevin, and they have been married for 14 years. And the beautiful part of their story is that they have 2 daughters. We'll talk about that in a minute. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
I read your book, Nothing Wasted, Struggling Well Through Difficult Seasons. I love the way that you laid out your book. You didn't just dive in, here's a difficult season, here's what I learned. Here's a difficult season, here's what I learned. It was a journey, just like life is. You got to see glimpses of your personality, of your struggles, of insight into, I know this about myself and I know it's hurting me, but I'm still hanging on because I just don't want to give it up kind of thing. And I thought, yeah, that's me too. Not necessarily with the same struggle, but I thought, yeah, there are some things in my life where I do that as well. I loved how you talked about challenges and then admitted, hey, this is what I needed to learn. And while I didn't like this challenge, I needed to learn this. I thought that was fantastic. As we get into the interview today, I want to just give a little bit of background for the listeners. When you and Kevin were first married, you agreed to the 5-year plan for starting a family. That feels very organized.
Yes. Yes, we do.
You wrote that being a mother was the ache of your heart. And in those first years, you did baby showers for others, planned them, executed them, all the while inside just crumbling. You knew that it wasn't time yet, but that ache was there. And being at a baby shower, of course, brought all of that to light.
Mm-hmm.
You said, someday it will be me.
Mm-hmm.
Except someday it wouldn't be you in the fact of birthing children. You earned an undergrad degree in Bible and psychology, and then you didn't use those degrees at all. You took a nanny job, which coincidentally involves children.
Yes.
That was because Kevin was doing what?
Kevin was in seminary in Dallas, Texas. We lived there for 4 years, and he was enrolled in the PhD program. But that didn't turn out the way we expected either.
I noticed in your book that you had to do that time and time and time again. And I imagine that that was difficult beyond what you shared in your book.
The expectations of everybody, I think, is that your life is going to go the way that you want it to go. And when you live in a privileged home with a privileged lifestyle, I had a very loving family, lots of brothers, and the idea of family was so obvious to me. Of course, I'm going to be a mom. Of course, I'm going to love my kids. the expectation meeting reality is where God teaches us. So
Amen.
it's laying down and surrendering everything that is perfect in your head and allowing him to show you the alternate route that is actually the perfect way, because it's what chisels us and it's what makes us into a Christian that's more like Christ. Because if we had all of our plans go our way, I don't know how much like Christ I would be. And I don't know how much like Christ I am, even after all these challenges. But I do see the growth now after all these years.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's a lot of what we talk about on this podcast. We have this vision and we have these plans of how things are going to work out, this straight line, if you will, from point A to point B. And life is just a whole bunch of zigzags. That's where we meet God. We do become Christ-like. If everything were perfect the way I wanted it, would I really need God?
Mm-hmm.
It's in those zigzags, those things that we didn't expect, those things that don't go according to our plans, where we realize how much we do need God, at least for me.
Would I go back and want biological children? I think that was always the dream. But knowing the children he's given me, those are my children.
Yes, absolutely.
So it just took however long for him to bring me to my children. They were my children all along, adopted from a wonderful birth mother who chose adoption for her 2 daughters. So if I were to rewind and say, okay, you can choose between being pregnant or Eden and Shiloh, I can't say no to my daughters. Those are my daughters. So God knew all along that this was our family. And when we started getting close to the adoption journey, where it was becoming very clear that that's how God was going to bring us our children, was through adoption, my number one prayer was, Lord, send me my children. My children are out there. Bring them to me. Bring me to them. Like, connect us, because
Right.
I know they're there. And it's funny because at that very time that I was praying that prayer, Ashley was pregnant with Eden. I just didn't know. I wouldn't know for 4 or 5 more months. But at the exact time I was praying, I know my children are out there. Lord, bring them to me. She was out there. She was growing.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the people who pray for their future spouses. God is doing it, but it has to be in his time frame, which goes to show that he's answering our prayers. It's just we want the fast food response right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's thinking, no, I've got a better plan.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of one of the chapters, you shared how you felt sad about not getting to spend Thanksgiving with your family. I'm an only child, and you've got brothers upon brothers upon brothers. I can only envision what your family holidays were like. It's probably a bunch of chaos and laughter and jokes on each other. You're with Kevin, which is your family, but you're sad. What I took away from that was what was missing were children. You wrote, I may grieve, complain, and even wallow in the pain I'm feeling during these hard seasons, but I'm not giving up, which is music to my ears, because that is what I believe in. And then you go on, endurance is admirable, and the years we spend during challenging seasons are building up muscles to endure patiently and struggle well. I'm not giving up. I'm reading your book and I'm going, yes, yes. And then you come across a challenge with your sweet husband. And it's almost as if it was a flip on ours, because I'm the one that has the health challenges. And my sweet husband, Jeff, has been amazing all of these years. And you talked about watching him with memory loss and how frustrated he was and how he would ask questions again and again that were the same questions that you had already answered. You could tell it was frustrating him, even though it was also frustrating you, because you're like, I already told you this.
Mm-hmm. And it would happen in the middle of the night. And my husband sleeps all night. He's baby when it comes to sleep. Like, he's out at 9 o'clock and you don't see him till 6 a.m. I'm the one who kind of wakes up throughout the night, has a bunch of dreams. We'll go to the bathroom, think about maybe taking a break and reading a book in the middle of the night. But no, he's the sleeper. So he would wake up in the middle of the night and turn over. And it was like he was a different person. It was so strange. He would say, what day is it? What program am I in? Did I already finish that class? Because we were in seminary and he was working on his dissertation. And he would just ask the same question. And I would laugh because it didn't seem real. I'm like, surely he's not asking me what day it is again. And then he would just like hug me and say, oh, I love you so much. And I'm like, who are you? Because you are not lovey-dovey like this, first of all. It's the middle of the night. You just asked me all these questions. And then he was not even awake, but he was so confused. And I was his only anchor. I was his only truth. And even when he first lost his memory, he had a focal seizure in 2009. We were both in college. And he called me and he's like, Kim, I don't know anything. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was at the hospital with one of my fellow students because I was an RA. So I took them to the hospital. I walked outside and I was talking on my phone. And he's like, I don't know anything. They're saying that I just went blank and I don't know anything. I got back to campus. I went into the room and everybody was so scared because Kevin had turned into a blank face. He didn't know anything. He was right. And as crazy as that sounds, that was the only thing he could verbalize, is just like everything just stopped for him. His whole world just stopped. And his coworker, she had looked over at him and he was just staring and she just knew something was wrong. He had had a focal seizure, which basically you stare and then your brain does something and then it wiped his memory. So from that point on, we knew there was a real problem, but he remembered me. And through all these years, I have been a home base for him and a comfort. He depends on me during moments of social anxiety or moments where he feels uncomfortable or he doesn't want to talk to people. He doesn't want to do something. He depends on my personality, my extroversion to get through the day sometimes. And so when his memory was gone, he was dependent on me for a whole lot more. It did draw us closer together, even though it was very confusing. And we were just at a loss for what was going on. And we didn't get answers for quite a few years.
Right. Years after all of this had started, he had a grand mal seizure that required an ambulance and the EMTs, and the EMT had mentioned, hey, he might be struggling with such and such. There was relief. It's crazy that a name of something that's a huge challenge can bring you relief, but the unknown, the questions, the why is this happening, are very hard to deal with when you don't know what it's called. Once you had that diagnosis, so to speak, you at least had some direction about what to do moving forward. You said it brought you closer, but talk to me about how those challenges during those years either made you angry or frustrated with God or brought you closer to God.
The biggest challenge with his health was that he was put on a seizure medication that made him depressed. And so it brought down his mood from pretty a level, chill guy who is mostly content with life to very low. He was working on his dissertation, which means he was in the basement of a library for 8 hours a day by himself. We called it the dungeon. He would go down to the dungeon every day. He had limited cell service. He would come up for lunch and then go right back down. And I was working in a job that I also didn't really enjoy. It was a financial job and it was just stretching me in ways that I had a hard time with. God's calling on our life. I believe I had zero humility. I think that we were just thought we were the greatest things on earth. But God slowly humbled both of us. And it was me through my job and it was him through his depression. Kevin bought a turtle. So that helped with his mood, believe it or not. And it actually helped us to be able to adopt our children because Ashley looked at our profile and she saw that we had turtles and bunnies and she loves animals. And so Turtle, who had been by Kevin's side for a few years, lifting his mood, now 5 years later, brought us our children.
I found it so interesting how open and honest and vulnerable you were in the book about what you struggled with. I applaud you for that. It's hard to do that in person, but then you're putting it into a book in black and white. You wrote that you have struggled with the lie that said, I can't handle this. I think a lot of us struggle with that. And the only way you get around that lie is when God says, yes, you can with me. You found 2 Corinthians 12:9, which reads, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. And your weakness is that you didn't think you could handle it. And he's saying, I can handle it, whatever challenge you're facing.
The word weakness in that verse is really what gets me, because we know God is strong. We get that he's more powerful. He's the most powerful. And we bow to him. But we don't realize that it's in our weakness that he is strong. It says a couple things. We're not strong in our own.
Yes.
On our own. But in our weakness, he is strong. So what I take that to mean is that when I am weak, which is a lot of the time, I say that phrase, I can't handle this. And it kind of made me catch my breath for a minute, because it is such a lie that has permeated my whole life. He empowers me through my weakness.
Yes.
And it's not a thing of the past. It's a thing of my present, is that I still believe the lie that I can't be a good mother because I lose my temper occasionally, or because I get so frustrated. We have that push and pull. We go back to the lies. If I were to go back to this verse, I would say, I am weak. You are strong. In my weakness, you are strong. And I would depend on his grace, because that is where the strength comes from, not from me. But in the moment of weakness, we get our strength from him.
Absolutely. You needed not your words, not your mindset, not your strength. You needed God's strength, his power, his authority, his courage, his peace. That's why I love verses like this, because it reminds us, I can't do it without you, God. And he's going, I got you. And he does.
I think that there is a decent bit of perspective that comes with age, where I can look back and see God's faithfulness. I'd go into a season of this struggle, and then I would fight it and fight it and fight it. And then God would slowly lead me out of that. And it was a matter of years. Financial struggles, anxiety, panic attacks, infertility, all these specific things, they hit you in the face, and then you have to overcome. But it takes a while. And now, having gone through so many things, I see his faithfulness more now, because I see how he has weaved us in and out of all of these challenges, and yet he has held us. There were so many days I was so confused. Like the psalmist, you have left me stranded, and my enemies are overcoming me. And for me, it wasn't always enemies, but the enemy of the heart, the enemy of the mind, and just circumstances that were fighting against what I felt like was right for our family and for myself. The way that God carried us through that was just slowly, persistently showing up, giving me grace, giving me love, answering prayers, our household, and then we had the money. We moved, and then Kevin got a better job. We met people, and then we were able to present our adoption profile to people who were considering adoption. It was just very, very slow. And now, okay, I see what you were doing.
That's why they say hindsight is 20/20. One of the big reasons I have come to learn is that it gives us the opportunity to be dependent on him and to learn what we need to learn during that time. If it's rushed, then we're not going to get everything we need from it. That's part of what your book showed as well. Each challenge, you learn something from it that prepared you for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, God, when he does that. Throughout your book, there was this thread of kids being part of your dream, of your heart's desire. A couple of chapters where you talked about the different ways that you and Kevin were involved with children. They were part of your daily life. You and Kevin worked with the youth group. You worked with kids in your language tutoring job. You taught at kids' college. All of these environments with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, no kids of your own.
Mm-hmm.
With all of these experiences, you felt like you were falling apart at growing your family. Like all of it rested on your shoulders. And I get that. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kevin comes home one day and says that he registered both of you for a prospective foster and adoptive families event. The listeners can't see this, but
that
you're
little
shaking your head.
That little booger. I'm still mad at him. He started it.
I love that, though, because it showed that he cared about you and what was meaningful to you and what your heart desired. And I'm sure his heart desired too. Somebody's got to say, okay, what we've done is not working. Clearly, we're not going to have our own children. And he said, we got to go at least listen, hear what they have to say. And you wrote, I was in such denial that it might be time to think about something else besides pregnancy. I wasn't ready. My heart was in too much pain to consider the possibilities. If I moved on to something else, that means I was letting go of my dream of giving birth.
2018 is when we went to the Wait No More conference in Florida. So we were 8 years into marriage, 3 years into trying on our own to get pregnant. And we had a little bit of medical exploration as far as like trying to figure out why we couldn't get pregnant. And this connects back to what Kevin had, which was an illness that was a mystery. He had been to the doctor several times and hadn't figured out why he was having the memory loss. And so they didn't figure out that he was going to have a seizure, that he had been having many seizures for most of his life. So having unexplained infertility is kind of the same thing. I was almost 30, way behind in my mind. Around that time that Kevin took us to this conference, God was beginning to rip apart my heart and say, this is real, Kim. You're not going to have kids through your body. And we can run as far away from the truth, but one day you just have to lay open your body and say, okay, rip me apart. And that day he ripped me apart because he opened my eyes to the needs of the world and to the beauty of adoption. And he made me feel like it wasn't about me anymore. He made me have immense compassion for the brokenness of children whose parents cannot take care of them or die. There are orphans. God opened my eyes to those children. And all of a sudden, the spotlight wasn't on me anymore. It wasn't on my empty womb. It was on my future children. And all of a sudden, it just seemed possible. It seemed possible to be a mom.
What you didn't know at that time was God was asking you to let go of your dreams of birthing a child because he wanted to give you a different dream. The lights were shining on another path, revealing itself to you. And I love this. You felt God say, your kids are out there, go get them.
You don't hear God's voice audibly often, but I promise you, I feel like he said, your kids are out there, go get them. And then I did. The grief of not being able to get pregnant still comes up in waves.
Sure.
I often talk with my friends about how infertility was the worst. It's some of the worst pain I've ever been through. God works on you, get you to where he wants you to be. And then you can look back and you can help other people who are still at the beginning parts of their journey. And that has been very redemptive for me. I can look them in the eyes and say, it sucks so bad, doesn't it? It's the worst. Just be with them in their pain and help them walk through wherever God has them at that stage.
I think that's such great wisdom. Tell us just a few wonderful, beautiful things about your two girls that you and Kevin have adopted.
Oh, man. My Eden is 4, and she has the coolest hair in all the land. She likes to wear her hair wild and free. I think it's because I taught her that. I said, do you want to wear it wild and free? Then she started saying it herself, like, Mom, I want it wild and free. And I said, okay, baby, just like you're wild and free. My second Shiloh is wild and free also. She has had a lot of health struggles. She came to us from the NICU and she was teeny, teeny, tiny, less than 5 pounds.
I could see the joy on your face from having your little girls. What a wonderful thing. Thank you, God, for answering your prayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I got 2.
Yes.
I got 2 of them, and that's amazing. It was amazing to even get one. They like the same things. They fight with each other like they're twins, and I put them in the same dresses, and they wear the same clothes. It's been a double blessing and doubly exhausting.
As we finish the interview today, I wanted to go to the last few sentences of your book, which read, "The tears I have cried through the trials of these years have been many. Those tears were caught. They were held, saved, and used for another purpose. Nothing is wasted." Those are beautiful words because trials are not easy. They come with tears. They come with frustration. They come with pain. Why did you choose "Nothing Wasted" as your title? That's pretty bold to say that.
Yeah, that's a good question. It started when I went to the Florida Christian Writers Conference in 2020. I was pitching the manuscript, and one of the agents mentioned something about unwasted. And so that was actually the working title for several years. It's not a normal word or phrase,
Right.
unwasted. So unwasted was the working title, kind of morphed into Nothing Wasted or Nothing is Wasted. And one day I was laying in bed and I had my Bible open. I'm not even kidding. It was the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. I looked up and it said, "Nothing wasted." I felt like that was God affirming. That's what the message I want you to convey is that through all of these struggles, and there were a lot, nothing wasted means it's not always redeemed in a tangible way, but nothing wasted takes, I did go through this pain. God is holding that pain. It wasn't for nothing because I lived that. That pain made me who I am. I guess it's the cry of my heart of like, God, please don't waste all this pain that I've gone through. Make me a better person because of it.
Beautiful. I think your words sum up God's heart. Thank you for being a guest today.
Yes, thank you.